Hello, my name is Jim, and I drive an expedited freight truck. You can call me an expediter, and that's the truck I drive right there. I recently had someone ask, if you're running as a solo, is it really still expedited freight? Well, the answer is yes, and no, and a little maybe. When people think about expedited trucking, they usually picture a freight emergency. A plant shut down due to broken machinery, a forgotten order for critical raw materials, a desperately needed piece of life-saving equipment, get it there now situations where every minute matters. And yeah, sometimes that's exactly what it is. But if you think expedited trucking is only about speed, you're only seeing a small portion of the overall picture. Honestly, the name expedited trucking in itself is a little misleading. It really doesn't even begin to fully describe our little corner of the trucking industry. Let's talk about that. You see, to really understand what expedited trucking is really all about, you have to understand where it actually started at. And that story starts in Detroit. You see, back in the late 70s and right on into the early 80s, the American auto industry was in the middle of a pretty significant shift. The just-in-time manufacturing was the big idea of the day. Keep the parts flowing in steadily, and you don't need to stockpile inventory. Less warehouse space, less overhead, less waste altogether. On paper, it made a lot of sense. Sounds efficient, right? And it was, right up until it wasn't. When you got no buffer stock and a supplier misses the delivery, you got a serious problem. Assembly lines just don't slow down, they stop. And a stop line in an auto plant can cost tens of thousands of dollars per minute, sometimes more. So the carriers started to recognize that there was real money in getting those missing parts there right now. No terminal stops, no co-loading with other freight, and hoping for the best, one truck, one shipment, going directly door to door. The truck doesn't stop for anything, doesn't have to. That was the idea. That's how the whole expedited freight industry got its start. But you see, there's a problem with building a business around emergencies. They don't run on schedule, and they don't happen every day. And that created a real problem for the carriers and drivers. You see, you can't sit around waiting for the next plant to go down. A truck parked in a truck stop isn't making any money, and neither is the driver. And as the old saying goes, if the wheels ain't turning, you ain't earning. So the carriers started asking, what else do shippers really need that looks and feels like what we're already doing, even when there is no emergency? What they came up with was straightforward. And once you start to think about it, it makes sense. Exclusive use. Think about how freight normally moves. Your shipment gets picked up, hauled to a terminal, unloaded, sorted, reloaded onto another truck, and eventually gets delivered. Lots of hands, lots of stops, lots of opportunities for something to go wrong. Exclusive use flips that entirely. One truck, one shipment, the driver picks up your freight and goes straight to the delivery point. No terminals, no sorting, no other customer's freight sharing the space in the back of the box. That truck is yours for the duration of the move. For a lot of shippers, it has nothing to do with speed. What they're really after is control. Knowing where their freight is at all times, knowing it isn't sitting on a dock waiting to get sorted, knowing nobody else is handling it along the way, knowing their shipment is safe and secure at all times. Think about who actually needs that kind of service. Say a pharmaceutical company moving clinical trial samples that can't be commingled with other freight. A trade show company that needs a custom-built exhibit to arrive at a convention center intact on a specific day during a small 2-hour loading window. A government contractor moving sensitive equipment that requires an unbroken chain of custody. A manufacturer shipping a one-of-a-kind prototype they absolutely cannot afford to have lost or damaged in a terminal or have prying eyes look at it. Not one of those is really an emergency. They're simply shipments where the standard freight network introduces too much risk, too many hands, too many handoffs, too many chances for something to go wrong. Here's another thing that sets expedited apart from what most people think of when they think trucking. Most folks picture a 53-footer with a dry van rolling down the interstate, and that is the workhorse of the conventional freight world, no question. But expedited carriers tend to run a much wider mix of equipment. Cargo vans can handle small, time-critical shipments. Sprinter vans offer more capacity while still staying nimble. And straight trucks, like the one I drive, are the bread and butter of the whole entire expedited freight world. And also, full tractor trailers are in the mix as well, just running a different kind of service than your typical truckload carrier. When speed is generally the priority, the expedited industry has a real advantage. But here's where it gets interesting. Not every load is a race against the clock. And that's when a solo driver can compete with the teams just fine, sometimes even has an edge. Exclusive use freight, by nature, it often isn't purely time critical. The shipper wants control, security, and accountability. They want their freight on one truck, handled carefully, delivered to the right place, and with the right person signing for it. A solo driver running that variety matters because it means the equipment can be matched to the load. Need a special handling? We can do that. Pallet jacks, moving dollies? We can do that too. Moving pads or even temperature control? We can do that too. As a viewer recently called it, concierge trucking. We cater to the customer's needs. And it's worth pointing out, these aren't just your basic everyday trucks. A fully spec temperature controlled unit, like the one I'm in, can represent a significant capital investment for the truck owner. Nowadays, well over $400,000. We're not talking about a stripped down box truck. The requirements for this type of freight are serious. Specialized handling requires specialized equipment. And where does a solo driver fit in with all this? A solo driver running a clean, well-maintained truck and delivering consistent, professional service can absolutely own that market. You don't need a team to haul a prototype shipment or a trade show exhibit. You need reliability and professionalism. And a solo operator can bring that every bit as well as a team. The honest reality is that a solo driver trying to compete purely on speed is going to be at a great disadvantage on the longer time sensitive hauls. But exclusive use freight, that opens up a lot of opportunity where the clock isn't quite so unforgiving. And since I'm running a solo at the moment, I'm very thankful for exclusive use freight. That's essentially all I've been running for the last 3 or 4 weeks. To give you an example, this last week I hauled a shipment from just outside of Philadelphia to the Denver area. One 215-pound pallet, temperature controlled, exclusive use, so it was the only freight in the box. Right around 1,760 miles. I picked up on a Thursday morning and delivered on a Monday morning. It was a good long weekend run, but I wasn't really pushed for time. A team could have done this run in a little over a day. It took me a little over 4. It was important to the customer, so it paid the truck a little over $4 a mile. So where exactly does all of this fit within the broader supply chain? Standard truckload and LTL carriers are built for volume and efficiency. They move as much freight as possible as cost effectively as possible. And they're very good at what they do. But expedited is a fundamentally different trade-off. The cost per shipment is higher, in some cases much higher. There's no getting around that. What you get in return are things that standard trucking models genuinely cannot offer. The guaranteed timing, the dedicated space, the direct routing, and accountability to your freight specifically, rather than a trailer shared among dozens of other customers. Experienced shippers don't use expedited for everything. Trust me, that would get expensive in a hurry. They use it strategically for the freight where the cost is not delivering on time far outweighs the premium for making sure it does. So let's get back to where we started. Expedited trucking. The name puts speed in your head, urgency, emergencies, freight crisis. And that's a real part of the story, always has been. But now you've got the fuller picture. Direct service, exclusive use, dedicated capacity, team drivers when the clock is truly running, a flexible equipment mix matched to the load, and a network built on relationships between carriers, owner-operators, and customers. And those people take genuine pride in coming through when it counts. At the end of the day, expedited trucking is a service model more than anything else. It's one that puts the shipper's specific needs ahead of the carrier's operational convenience. And that shift in priorities, straightforward as it sounds, what makes this corner of the trucking industry its own thing. It's not just about getting there fast, it's about getting there right. If you find this type of content informative and useful, please take a moment, like and subscribe for more. It really helps the channel out. Y'all take care now. Peace.